The path it began modestly, as these things frequently do in a location like this, far out on a gravel road with houses spread apart and a 20-minute trip to the closest supermarket. Near 2014, my wife Myla and I chose this location near Kings Mountain, North Carolina, believing it would be peaceful for raising our children. Robert Chad Bridges, our neighbor, and I shared a road, was rutted from rain and only wide enough to accommodate 2 cars. He appeared to be a quiet man who lived with his fiancée, Leslie, at first. However, then the issues started. Robert kicked up rocks and dust as he drove too quickly down the route. At the age of 12, our son enjoyed playing outside, and I concerned that he would be struck. I begged Robert to slow down one day in September of 2015. Before I knew it, he became irate and claimed that it was his road as well. Swung at me, striking my jaw with his fist. Tasting blood, I staggered back and dialed 911. They filed a report, but it was unsuccessful. When Myla heard, she became enraged. She went over to Robert's fiancée and told her to control him. As a result, they filed complaints against us, claiming that Myla had stalked them and threatened them. It was untrue. Yes, Myla was protective, but she wouldn't that. Nevertheless, the negative emotions intensified. Things worsened by December. One evening, Myla was taking our dog on a walk when Robert pulled out a shotgun and aimed it directly at her. Pale and trembling, she raced back to the home and told me what had happened. "Jeff seems prepared to withdraw the trigger," she murmured, keeping her voice down to avoid disturbing the children. I hugged her, but a knot started to grow in my stomach. We submitted another report, but once more, no arrests. The police claimed that he and she had stated it, but they were powerless in the absence of witnesses. We tried to stay away from Robert after that. His truck would be parked at strange angles, as if he was keeping an eye on our house. I would lie awake at night, wondering if he was out, listening to every stream and rustle outside. There, like pressure inside a sealed jar, the tension gradually increased. If our paths met, we would glare at each other. Once, when Robert drove slowly past, while I was mending the fence, his icy gaze fixed on me. He whispered, "Better watch your step, Oaks," through his open window. I turned away without answering, but it stayed with me. Even during the day, Myla began to keep the doors shut. Our son also observed. He had questioned why we no longer waved to our neighbors. I could see the concern in his eyes even though we assured him it was nothing. The road turned into a battlefield. In the morning, Robert would wake us up by loudly revving his engine. Trash that appeared to have come from his property would be dumped close to our driveway. "This has to stop, Robert," I said, confronting him again. "Everybody is attempting to live here." He barked sharply as he laughed. "Jeff, you initiated it. You and your spouse are constantly whining. If you don't like it, perhaps you should relocate." It was a typical Wednesday, January 27, 2016. To get our son to the bus stop at the end of the road, I got up early. "Be careful out there," Myla yelled, even though she was still in bed. I didn't give it much thought, but I nodded. As I got our son into the car, the air was clear. He was silent, tinkering with his backpack. I noticed Robert's pickup approaching from the opposite direction as we continued down the dirt route. I assumed he was on his way to work. I pulled to the side, anticipating that he would follow suit because the road was too small to drive on. He didn't slow down, though. Rather, he veered, and there was a crunch of metal as his truck crashed into the side of my car. We were startled by the impact. When my son yelled, I tightened my hold on the steering wheel. With my pulse pounding, I went outside to see how my son was doing. He was merely afraid, but he was okay. Red-faced, Robert got out of his pickup. "Why are you obstructing traffic?" he yelled. I retaliated. "I was rammed by you. You may have made your way around." Now, inches apart, we were shouting. I had my phone in the car. I was ready to contact the cops when I heard another engine. Miller's truck arrives. From the home, she must have heard the smash. She leapt out and hurried over. "Are you okay, Jeff? What's happening?" Her gaze went when she witnessed the damage. Her eyes went wide. "This is also your fault," Robert said, turning to face her. "In the way all the time." Myla stepped forward, still defensive. "Don't speak to us in that manner. This is your fault." The dispute quickly became heated. Words flew. Allegations regarding the gun incident, the punch, and the previous months. Robert's neck veins protruded as his voice went higher. "I'm tired of both of you." Time seemed to slow down as I watched him reach inside his pickup. He produced the identical shotgun that he had previously used. Myla gave a gasp. I raised my hands and shoved her behind me. "Robert, put it down. It's not worth it." He didn't listen, though. His eyes were wild, like if something had broken. He aimed the weapon at us. "Do you believe you can manipulate me?" he growled. My son remained in the vehicle, staring out the window with his face pushed against the glass. "Consider the child," I pleaded. "Simply relax." After a brief moment of hesitation, Robert fired. It was a loud boom. When the shot struck Myla, she let out a scream. Blood splattered on the ground as she fell to the ground. Next, I felt a searing pain in my brain that sent me to my knees. Everything became hazy. My son was sobbing, and I heard the bus rumbling far away. Robert smoked his rifle while standing there, and then left as if nothing had occurred. After that, I don't recall anything. The environment faded in and out. Voices urgent. Paramedics arrived. He was shot in the head. "She's not breathing." My youngster bolted for the bus, traumatized, unaware that his mother had passed away. Days later, my body was weak and my head was bandaged when I woke up in the hospital. The doctor explained that although I was fortunate to survive, I would never be the same. Limp, headaches, and memory problems. Milo was instantaneously killed. That day, Robert was taken into custody by the police. He was asserted self-defense, claimed that we had drawn on him first, but the facts proved otherwise. We have no firearms. The trial 2018 was a nightmare come true. I described the feud, the collisions, and the gunfire while testifying from a wheelchair. Additionally, our son spoke up, Tiny. I witnessed my parents being shot by the man. They weren't acting negatively. In his testimony, Robert expressed his anxiety that we would keep him out. However, the jury rejected it. He was found guilty of assault on me, second-degree murder for Myla, and other offenses, given a 38-year sentence. Years later, that path still haunts me. Even though I moved away, the memories are still there. The loneliness that allowed hatred to grow, the way the ground crunched under tires fester invisibly. The most terrifying thing to me is how unremarkable it began. In before of our eyes, a neighbor gets transformed into a monster over a minor disagreement about the road. The standoff at Lenoir the day Amy and I drove up that little country road to our new house in the foothills outside of Lenoir is still fresh in my mind. We had two energetic little daughters and prepared to live in the country. Roland Juntz, the man who sold us the property, resided next door. At first, this 60-year-old Vietnam veteran appeared to be a solid man, residing with his daughter Aliasia and Ricky, her boyfriend. He even showed us Holly, his pit bull. Roland nodded and continued, "He's a good boy, keeps the animals away." I believed that this was the beginning of a calm existence as we shook hands. I took care of most things at home because Amy was a nurse who worked long hours out of town. I had lost my leg in a vehicle accident years ago, but I used an ATV for chores and was able to move around with my prosthetic. The girls cherished having a place to run. Alasha was kind to them. She would ask them to choose films from her library. "Come on in, kids," she would say with a big smile. "I've acquired every Disney one." Ricky also assisted, offering to make repairs after noticing my impairment. "Just holler if you need help with that fence," he said to me one afternoon. Though I like doing things myself, I was grateful for it. One January afternoon in 2008, everything changed. At the age of 7 and 8, the girls went to borrow a movie from next door. Holly ran out after they unintentionally slid open the glass door. Snapping and biting, he chased them across the yard. In the end, Both girls' legs had puncture wounds. The expenses began to come in. I hurried them to the doctor. Roland arrived that evening with an apologetic expression. "I really apologize for it. Holly doesn't typically act out," he claimed. "I'll pay for it." After paying the first bill, he balked when the second one came in, roughly $1,900. When I showed him this, he complained that it looked false. "I'm not paying that." On my porch, we got into a fight. "Roland, it's real." The girls required shots and sutures. He simply shook his head and turned to go. For the medical expenses, we were forced to sue him. That June, the court ruled in favor of Roland, declaring he promised to pay in installments even if the evidence was insufficient. $100 a month, perhaps. He made the suggestion over the phone. I flatly declined it. "No, I want everything at once. We are owed by you." The friendliness disappeared after that. Ricky and Alyasha stopped visiting. Sometimes I saw Roland standing still, gazing out his window at our house. It produced my skin is crawling. The complaint began modestly, but quickly grew. He would report our ATV tracks close to his property boundary to the sheriff. I would report him for allowing Holly to go around. We must have filed more than 24 reports together over the course of the following year. Ricky once stomped over and yelled at me about a boundary sign that I allegedly shifted. He yelled, "You think you own everything." He persisted in pushing even after I ordered him to stop. It became physical. I swung a wood that clipped his head after firing a warning shot into the air. Blood all over the place. Roland and Ricky were detained by the police for 2 weeks after being accused of trespassing or something similar. Ricky gave me a sneer from across the yard when they got out. He murmured, "This ain't over," and drove off. He and Alyasha soon packed up and moved out of Roland's house permanently. It seemed weird to live next to Roland by yourself. Following that, at strange hours, he would mow his grass. When we were attempting to sleep, the engine was roaring. When I awoke, I would see the sound, glance out, and catch a glimpse of him standing silhouetted against his porch light, pausing to glance in our direction. "What's he doing?" One evening, Amy pulled the curtain and whispered, "Back, just ignore him," I said. However, I was uncomfortable. The girls began to inquire, "Why doesn't Mr. Yun see wave anymore?" The younger one inquired. I didn't have a suitable response. Holly turned into the flashpoint. The dog would frequently wander over, snarling at the girls over the fence or chasing our cat up trees. Roland would scream if I shooed him away. "Leave my dog be," he said from his side. Up until that evening in late May 2009, tensions were simmering. It was about 10 o'clock at night. Holly bared his teeth and charged across the yard once again as I was outside checking on the cat. He cornered the cat by pursuing it fiercely. I took hold of he stopped him by shooting the dog with my rifle. With a yelp, he fell. As I dialed 911, my hands trembled. The dog of my neighbor attacked our pet. I informed the operator. I had to shoot it. Roland is now making threats against me. After a few minutes, I heard Roland's loud voice coming from his home. He was also on the phone. I reasoned. Then he spoke too loudly. "You better get here quick before I kill him." My heartbeat accelerated. I told Amy to keep quiet after hearing the girls inside. "Lock the doors," I said. Her eyes widened as she nodded. "Dad, what's going on?" Ashley, my 8-year-old, grasped her sister's hand and asked. "It was just a miscommunication. The police are on their way." Soon later, 2 deputies showed up. Deputy Motti and Sergeant Thomas McManus Robbins, with a flashlight sweeping. They parked and walked over to my doorstep. Calmly, McManus continued, "Miss Moore, tell us what's happened." I pointed to the dog's location as I described it. Robbins went to check after nodding. The females peered out from behind me, with the exception of one window that glowed dimly. Roland's home was black. I pondered whether he was observing us. Abruptly, a shotgun burst broke the silence. The air was filled with buckshot. Robbins was struck in the arm, leg, and chest as he jerked back. He groaned and slumped. "Get down." McManus pushed the females in the direction of the door and yelled. There was another gunshot. Tony first sensed burning in my shoulder, then in my hip and back. As I landed, pain burst. "Daddy!" exclaimed Ashley. She clutched her side as she gasped. Blood permeated her shirt. Her kidney had been touched by the bullet. Despite taking a blow to the forearm, McManus fired again in Roland's direction. Robin joined in, wounded yet still aware. More gunfire reverberated. I heard the girls wail inside with Amy, while I lay there, my vision fading. "Hold!" I pulled Ashley close despite the pain, as I whispered to her. "On!" As assistance arrived, sirens could be heard in the distance. The gunfire ceased. They later informed me that Roland was slain in his living room by the deputy's return fire. It was a foggy ride in the ambulance. I was struck 6 times, according to the doctor, yet nothing essential. Ashley persevered despite needing surgery. The policeman also made a full recovery. Robbins with wounds. Eventually, McManus returned to duty. After that, we relocated. I couldn't remain in a location where that recollection was so prevalent. I occasionally consider how a basic bill became this horror. How a neighbor's once friendly look turned sinister. It infiltrates my dreams. That sensation of being watched in the dark. That sensation of being watched in the dark. The Devil's Ocker. I had known the Lawson family for a number of years as the pastor of a little church in Eufaula, Oklahoma. Robert Lawson was a tall man in his mid-40s who exuded a calm, collected demeanor. One of those nails who seemed to be bearing certain personal burdens. He did various tasks around town, patching roofs and mending fences, and he didn't say much unless someone spoke to him. Cheryl, his wife, was a homemaker with compassionate eyes, gentler, more approachable, and had a habit of bringing young Emily to Sunday school early so she could assist, arrange crayons for the other kids. 6-year-old Emily was bright and always had a smile on her face throughout service, as if the world had not yet revealed its dark sides to her. They lived on the outskirts of town, where the pavement gave place to gravel, followed by fields that gradually grew denser into the woodlands that led to the hills to the east. I frequently drove by their location, a swing dangling unevenly from a tree branch and an old white house with flaking paint. I never thought I would have nightmares about that site one day. On a Tuesday afternoon in early October 2009, it all started with a phone call. The phone rang as sermon notes were piled high on my desk. "Pastor Gary," someone said. Robert was solid, yet there was a strained quality to it. "I must speak. Is it possible for me to visit?" I answered, "Of course, Robert. Doors are always open." He was there in less than an hour. As he ascended the steps, the church parking lot's leaves rustled in the cool, grey air. His hands were stuffed deep into the pockets of his worn-out jacket. His gaze was fixated on the flooring between us as he took a seat across from me. "What's going on?" I asked softly. He paused. His voice trailed off when he did speak. "It's my dad. 4 years. We've struggled. He ran me over with his automobile in a fight in November of last year. I broke my arm. Stunned, I blinked. "Robert, good God. Have you reported it?" He gave a slight nod. "The police arrived, but nothing stuck. He's intelligent. Always stay just inside the bounds of the law. He's now threatening once more. Claims he will pursue us, Cheryl, Emily, and me. I believe he has a terrible interest. Perhaps meth. He has supporters, the sort that never forget." I made an effort to speak calmly. "You need to go to the authorities again. They can't help," he stated bluntly. "I just wanted someone to know in case something happens." We spent about an hour conversing. He talked about the decades-long cruelty of his father's debts and resentment. He said he had discovered a piece of land in the Sandboys Mountains, close to Red Oak, he said. 40 acres of peace. A fresh start, he said precisely. We prayed together before he departed. He shook hands firmly, yet I can still recall the look in his eyes, like a man who already knows he's being pursued. He is half fearful and half resigned. Cheryl gave me a call 2 days later. Her voice wavered. "I was informed by Pastor Robert that he had a conversation with you. Is it possible for me to visit by myself?" She appeared worn out when she got there, her hair hastily pulled back, a crumpled clutch tissue in one hand. "Robert's worried about his father," she murmured. "However, it goes beyond that. Late-night calls have begun coming in. There is silence and no one speaks. Someone passed the house slowly last week, incredibly slow. I keep my revolver close at hand, but Chet trailed off, looking out the window. Is it him, in your opinion? His dad? I inquired. Perhaps. Robert claims to be associated with harmful individuals. Once, we even discovered a letter on our door. Avoid becoming involved. No explanation, no name. She informed me of their intention to relocate to the Highlands. 40 acres of seclusion and security. She claimed that Emily was ecstatic as she drew depictions of pine forests and cabins. Her voice broke when she said the name of her daughter. All I want is for her to be secure. We also prayed together. She gave me a hug and walked away. Many thanks, Pastor. The significance of this is beyond your comprehension. I didn't see any of them alive after that. 1 week went by, followed by 2. During the Sunday service, I saw that their chairs were empty. I drove over to their house the next afternoon. The drapes were drawn and their truck had gone. The backyard appeared normal at first, but as soon as I stepped onto the porch, there was a strange silence. I could see a toy on the floor and dishes in the sink through a window. The family seemed to have disappeared in the middle of the everyday pace of existence. The following day, I gave the sheriff a call. The Lawsons haven't been around, I informed Deputy Harris. Robert said that he was being threatened by his father. We'll check it out, he said. Days became longer. Then the gossip started. Some murmured terrible things, while others claimed to have left the state. Search parties were established on October 17th. I participated in one, traveling beneath a low cloud ceiling into the Samboy Mountains. The paths meandered through silent, thick forests like veins. Cell service disappeared. We broke up, calling their names into the trees. They divided into smaller groups. A hunter radioed in by late afternoon. On a gravel trail south of Kinta, he had discovered their truck. We rushed over there. With its door in a jar, the white pickup was partially submerged in muck. Maisie, their dog, moaned pathetically inside, exposing her ribs. She drank water like she hadn't in days after someone handed it to her. One searcher remarked, "Look here," gesturing to the rear seat. Their phones, wallets, and IDs were all undamaged. There was a large pile of money behind a blanket. Later on, we counted $32,000. Someone whispered, "Why would they leave that behind?" Nobody responded. A brown bag that Cheryl had told me contained their essential documents was missing, as was her revolver. They had drove directly there, according to the GPS. Nothing after that. I informed the deputy that I would investigate a neighboring trail as night fell. "I won't go far," I declared. Almost instantly, the trees engulfed me. Branches tore at my sleeves. The air was still and thick, and the sound of silence pressed on my ears. "Robert, Cheryl." My voice was heard, but it did not come back. Then a twig, a snap, a close. I froze. There was another rustling sound, soft but purposeful, like footsteps moving slightly out of sight. I could see shadows, tree trunks, and undergrowth as my flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Then I noticed it. A ripped piece of pink fabric became tangled in a thorny bush. That color was familiar to me. Emily's coat. I grabbed it up, my hands shaking. "Emily," I muttered. The woods remained silent. A branch breaking, another crack, nearer. I spun around this time, the light trembling madly. I didn't see anything. I was aware that I wasn't alone, though. The atmosphere became heavier, colder, and altered. My heart pounded, clutching that pink piece like a lifeline. I stumbled back to the group after backing away and then breaking into a sprint. I gasped to the deputy, "There's something out there. Something or someone is observing." 4 weeks, searches were conducted. Helicopters flew in circles. Dogs combed the ridges. The slopes were searched by volunteers. I personally returned multiple times. I once believed I saw a tall and moving figure facing me far down the valley while standing on a ridge at nightfall. It vanished when I blinked. His alibi was as flimsy as paper, and Robert's father denied everything. There was never any proof. In November 2013, 4 years later, hunters discovered skeletal remains 3 miles away from the truck's location. 1 child, 2 grown-ups. It was verified by DNA, the Lawson. There were only bones strewn by animals over time. No obvious injuries, no bullet wounds. As undetermined, the case was closed. However, there are still heartbreaking evenings when I wake up and hear those ghostly footsteps in the shadowy forest of my thoughts. There are times when I believe I see a tall, motionless, waiting figure just beyond the pines, when I'm driving on those mountain roads and the fog is floating through the woods, observing. And I recall Robert's final remarks prior to his departure from my office. "Pastor, if something goes wrong, swear you'll keep us in mind. Every night, I do. Keep us in mind. Every night, I do." The Uffelman conflict when I was 8 years old. My parents and I relocated to Micasport. My parents desired a more peaceful existence for me, away from the commotion and bustle. So we moved from Indiana. Issues over there, with only a few other houses nearby. Our new home was situated on a road by the sea. Richard and his wife lived across the street. Rick and Jerry, Anita's 2 boys. Everything felt perfect at first. In our backyard, Richard even assisted my dad in building a deck. We cooked barbecues. Almost every day after school, Rick and Jerry and I would play together. "Dad, can I go over to Rick's?" While kicking at the gravel in our driveway one afternoon, I inquired. My father raised his gaze from his instruments. "Yes, son. Just return before it becomes dark." It was simple in the beginning. Richard was a post office employee and a veteran of the Navy. He spoke extensively about order and discipline. His youngsters were courteous and consistently said yes, sir, and no, sir. However, little things began to alter after that. The dogs were the first. A few of them were with Richard, and they barked a lot, particularly at night. Once, when we were all outside, my mother gently brought it up. "Do you think you could keep the dogs calmer after this, Richard? Time for bed. We have trouble falling asleep," she remarked. After giving her a long look, he nodded. "I'll try my best, Florence." However, the barking continued. It became louder, if anything. Richard soon began to gripe about us. He said that the lights from our car flashed into his windows excessively when we arrived home late. It didn't help that my dad apologized and parked differently. I heard loud noises outside one evening. I looked out the window and saw Richard is pointing at my dad while standing in his yard. "Michael, you're getting too near to my line." Richard responded sharply, "Stay on your side." My father raised his hands. "Richard is not who we are. Let's have a neighborly conversation about this." The friendship waned after that. When Richard noticed us, he stopped waving. I was no longer permitted to play with his boys. One day, Anita told my mother over the phone, "Richard wants the boys to stop mingling, Florence." Over the phone, she said, "It's for the best." With a troubled expression, my mother hung up. "What's happening to them?" She spoke softly to my dad. Playing with Rick and Jerry was something I missed, but I forgot about it after what happened. Richard started to use a loudspeaker. Every time we were outside, he would shout at us from his porch, "Return to your home. We are bothered by you." His loud, irate voice reverberated across the street. I was riding my new bike in the driveway when it happened the first time. I jumped at the sound and I scraped my knee after falling. My mother hurried outside and dragged me in. "Why is he doing that?" With tears in my eyes, I asked Eyes, "Honey, I'm not sure." She gave me a hard hug and added, "Avoid the road." My folks began phoning the police. Nothing changed despite their repeated visits and conversations with Richard. He also lodged complaints, claimed that we were hurling firing at his pool, stealing his mail, and leaving trash on his yard. He had friends and witnesses who supported him even though none of it was real. The police were stranded. In the center, the situation worsened. Richard installed strong lighting on his home, pointing them directly at our windows. In the evening, our rooms were as bright as daylight. I was unable to fall asleep. I would lie there and listen to the hum of those lights while gazing at the ceiling. "I'm afraid, Dad." One morning during breakfast, I told him. He tousled my hair. "Mikey, we're taking care of it. Do not be concerned." However, I could see the stress on his face. My mother was always exhausted. To cover the lights, they purchased thick curtains, although this didn't much help. Then Richard and his lads began shooting weapons in his yard. Loud booms repeatedly, as if they were rehearsing. It felt like a cautionary tale. I overheard my parents conversing quietly in the kitchen one evening. My dad said, "We need proof." The attorneys claim that in the absence of proof, it's just our word against his. My mother concurred. "Let's get the camera set up. It will detect his actions." A video camera was positioned in the kitchen window and aimed toward his residence. It recorded everything while running continuously. I observed them. Try it out in the hopes that it would improve the situation. However, the harassment persisted. Richard occasionally stared as he drove slowly past our house. His boys never smiled as they observed from their windows. Although everyone in the neighborhood was aware of the conflict, nobody wished to become involved. It was a tiny space. Silently, people took sides. After a few weeks, my dad began going outside with his weapon in a holster. He told my mother just in case. That increased my fear. What if a negative event occurred? I stopped going outside by themselves. The road that separated our homes seemed like a boundary that should never be crossed. After dinner on August 29th, my parents made the decision to go for a stroll. They did it as a way to decompress. First, they made sure the camera was operational. "Remain inside, Mikey." My mother kissed my forehead and whispered, "We'll be back soon." I watched them leave after nodding. I went to my room and tried to read a comic book, but I was unable to concentrate. It was too quiet in the house. The shots then began. Bang, bang, bang. There are a lot of people arriving from the other side. I rushed to the window after dropping the book. As I peered out, my heart raced. My parents were motionless on the ground. Richard emerged from his home brandishing a weapon. Calm as ever, he approached them and shot up close once more. "Mom, Dad," I yelled. I had no idea what to do. Shaking, I hid behind my bed until the cops arrived. Lights flashed and sirens wailed. They discovered me there and extracted me. Anita was sobbing outside, but Richard simply stood there as if nothing was wrong. The footage from our camera was taken by the police. It displayed everything. Richard's boys firing, the gunfire coming from his window. Furthermore, him completing it. He claimed that since my dad was approaching him with a gun, it was self-defense. The recording, however, showed differently. Everything became hazy after that. I moved in with family. Richard was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. His boys were taken away. As they were children obeying orders, there was no charge. I still think about it years later. The straightforward neighbor speech became so dark. Richard had made his home into a stronghold. There are cables to trip attackers, hidden rooms, and guns everywhere. He taught his sons how to be soldiers, until it was too late. We were unaware of the depth of his rage. I occasionally go to McKeesport, but I stay off that road. The lingering terror serves as a reminder that even in a conflicts can become fatal in a peaceful setting. Conflicts can become fatal in a peaceful setting.